welcome to this episode of WigJig Jewelry Making Skills. This is Talking Hands. I'm Gary Hellwig.
Suzanne Hellwig.
And we're going to talk about how to make a bead dangle open and close. Now, you can see here we have a bead dangle. A bead dangle is just a bead that you hang from an earring or a jewelry item. And a closed bead dangle has a wrap loop at the top so that that loop will not ever open again. An open bead dangle has an open loop at the top, so you can open that loop, connect it to another component, and then close the loop and leave it connected. So we're going to show you how to make both. Now, we'll start...
Oh, and Gary, what's the difference between these long pins right here?
What we do with a bead dangle is we generally use a pin called a head pin. And a head pin is like a straight pin that you would use in sewing, except for the end is blunt, so it won't stab you.
But just so we can see it closely, it's got a head on the end so the bead won't fall through.
Exactly.
So that's what these are.
This is a head pin.
With the bead, okay, so you see nothing at the bottom of the lowest bead.
Right, and
this
is a pin called an eye pin. And what you can do with an eye pin is you can connect a series of beads that way.
And isn't it true you can buy those pre-made or you can make it yourself?
You can buy them pre-made or make it yourself.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're going to start by making, we'll use, well, let me say the tools that we use for this are round nose pliers, a flush cutter, and 2 pair of chain nose or bent chain nose pliers.
And the
chain nose have a smooth, flat jaw.
Got it.
So the first step in the process here...
Works when you said 2, you mean this is the second pair right here.
Exactly.
One's bent and one's straight.
You can use straight or bent, whichever you prefer.
Okay.
What you want to do to start is you want to grab your wire immediately above the bead with the bead resting all the way down at the bottom. Grab it above the bead with your pliers, and then you want to bend it over 90 degrees like that.
Okay.
And now we're going to make our loop at the top.
With the round nose?
And we use the round nose pliers for this. And, you know, as a beginner, it's always a good idea to make bigger loops. And as you get more advanced, then you can make smaller loops. And you'll find that
and why don't you make a bigger one because it shows up better on the camera?
I'll make a bigger one.
Great.
And so I'm going to grab it there. I'm going to make my loop. And I push the wire around as far as I can until I run into the bead as an obstruction. I reorient the wire on my pliers so that I can complete the loop, and then I bend it around the bead.
So the pliers are keeping the loop uniform and pretty.
And they keep it round. And
right.
Now, what you want to do at this point is you want to inspect the loop to make sure that it's centered above the bead. And in this particular one, I'm off just a little bit to one side, so I'm just going to use my pliers and give it a slight twist, and so that the loop is centered on top of the bead.
Okay.
Now, if I wanted to make an open loop, I would just cut that wire right there, and then I would have an open loop bead dangle. To make a closed loop, now what we do that's different from most of the instructions on how to make wrap loops is we hold the loop with our pliers while we're doing the wrap. And by holding the loop, you're preserving the round shape. You won't allow it to get distorted. And so now you just wrap the wire around. And you want to keep this wire perpendicular to the wire through the bead while you're wrapping.
Oh, I see. So that it makes even wraps, right?
Exactly.
Ah, that's how you keep them even.
And I'm going to do about 2 wraps till I filled up the space above the bead.
Okay.
And now we're ready to cut the excess wire. And so I use my flush cutter with the flat side of the flush cutter towards the finished piece. And I'm just going to give it a cut like that.
Great.
And I have just a little bit of excess wire there. Right there.
That you could snag on something.
Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold this loop with 1 pair of pliers, and then with the second pair of pliers we're going to get in there and squeeze and twist. squeeze, and twist.
You know, we've had several
tightens the wire.
Designers tell us that they had never done that technique till you showed them, and they love it now because it makes their pieces look so much more finished.
So you can see it's like a little spring on top of the bead, and that's the wrap loop. So that's a wrap loop bead dangle, and now we're going to make one with an open loop real quick. And so the steps are the same, only I'm going to use my round nose pliers because the tips of my round nose pliers are absolutely the finest tips that we have. And then I'm going to make that 90-degree bend there. So now I'm going to use my round nose pliers to make the loop. And then I have to reorient it and complete the loop. And I want the loop to be centered over the wire through the beads. And it looks like it is.
It looks good.
So now we're going to cut the excess wire here. First we drop the cutter and then we cut the excess wire.
Right.
And since this is an open loop, yeah, these pliers will do. Since this is an open loop.
So you have the round chain nose.
This is your just the chain
nose.
Chain nose.
Not bent.
Yes. I cut with too much of an overlap, so I'm going to have to cut a little bit more wire off.
That's okay. As long as there's more wire to work with.
Yeah. There we go.
Good.
There we go. Just a tiny little bit, and since this is an open loop, I'm just going to close it like that. And you can see that there's a very small opening there at the top of that loop, and we have a special tool that we use to help us close that. It's called loop closing pliers.
Oh, great.
And they have that little groove in them.
Yeah,
right
is that
there.
it? Can people see that? There's a little tiny groove in it that's different than the bent chain nose. Great.
So we grip the wire with that groove.
It goes in the groove. The wire on each side goes in a groove.
Right, and then we give it a slight squeeze.
And those are great pliers. I love them. And what do we call those again?
Loop closing pliers.
Right.
And so that'll close that loop up, and that's how we make an open loop bead dangle.
And we sell all of this. We sell all the supplies and the tools.
Exactly.
So those were loop closing pliers.
Yes. And so that's a closed loop and an open loop bead dangle. And you'll find that there's many things you can do with that. And the obvious and easy one is you can just connect this to an ear wire and make an earring.
Right, and so to recap, when you went over the the tools at the beginning of the video, you mentioned 4, but really it's 5. With the loop closing.
The loop closing pliers are, a very good accessory to add to your toolkit because they help you with closing small loops. You just grab the loop and squeeze it closed.
Super. Looks great. Okay, thanks.